Thank you. So I'm in the district team, the same as Russ. So we are in the business of killing things, I suppose, to put it plainly. So Russ spoke about some of the weeds and the animals that we tackle. And he mentioned we like to call it, we've nicknamed it Norman grass, roads feather top roads, because Russ is a big tackler of it. But he did mention declared weeds. So there's more than 137 declared weeds in South Australia, all at different levels. We do not have enough resources, be that budget or staff on the ground, to be able to get all of them in every corner of our region. So we, over the last 12 months, have gone through a process to develop a bit of a priority list and a plan on how we're going to tackle all of those. So the purpose of that is to give our staff some focus and some direction on what they're doing, how they're doing it, where they're doing it, so that we've got consistent messaging across our region for you guys, so that when one person rings up to complain about a weed or wants some advice, when their neighbour rings up in 2 months' time, we're giving them the same message and it's not different across the space. It gives us a bit of guide on how we develop our projects, and directs our resources into the areas of the highest priority where we can actually get some bang for buck and see some change on the ground. So to start off with, we did a desktop assessment of all the declared pest plant species. Like I said, there's 137. We didn't have time to go in depth in all of them. We ranked the sort of the highest priority ones and the ones that were most common or prevalent in our region. We used the South Australian Weed Risk Management Guide. So if you Google that, you'll find it pops up straight away. I think it was developed in 2008 and it's been used across the state, and even interstate as well. So it was a pretty robust process. And we also had to identify the different land uses that each weed occurred in. So obviously, boxthorn in native veg is going to have a different impact to a boxthorn in cropping or an irrigated area. So we had to list the different land use types as well. So as part of the SA Weed Risk Management Guide, there's two sections. One is the weed risk and one is the feasibility of containment. I'm just going to have to refer to my notes. So you get scores out of this. So the weed risk at first looks at invasiveness, so the ability for a plant to spread. It also looks at the impacts, so the economic, the environmental and the social impacts, the potential distribution as well. So the total area of that land use, so the total irrigated area within our region or the total cropping area within our region that the weed could spread to. And that gives you a score. And then we also looked at the feasibility of containment. So it looks at control costs. So in here we had to factor in the time that you might spend searching for a weed, how you access the weed, how you treat it, and our ability to gain commitment from you guys as landholders into tackling that plant as well. We also looked at the current distribution, so within each land use again, and persistence. So how long does it take to eradicate something? You know, how long-lived is the seed? How quickly and easily does it spread? Does it fly on the wind or water or any of those sorts of things? So during the process, once we'd been through that, we had some scores. The staff also had a bit of a discussion about the current and likely future resources and our capability. So there's obviously been, back in the day, animal plant control boards. There was reiterations of that. Now we are the landscape board that tackle pest plants and animals. And so there's been a lot of resources put into controlling pest plants and animals over a very long time in our state. So we didn't want that to slip in certain areas and let the efforts that may have happened, 20 years ago be fruitless. So. And we also had to look at the level of declaration for individual species. Russ mentioned gazanias before, so gazanias are a good example. There are different levels of declarations for different weed species in our state. So gazanias are only declared for sale and movement. So we can't enforce control if people have them growing on their roadside or on their property. You can't sell them in a nursery, and you can't collect the seeds and sprinkle them around the roadside. But so there's different levels of control and things that we can do there. So from that process, and you can't see this very well, we came up with a matrix. So in the top left corner there is the higher risk and the higher feasibility of control, all the way down to the bottom right-hand corner there, where they are a relatively lower risk and lower chance of control. So this is in our Pest Plant Action Plan summary. So there will be copies of it on the website soon, and there's also some hard copies on the table over there if anyone is interested. I will keep motoring. Control actions. So as I said, we assessed all of the weeds, figured out where they sat in the scale of things, and they fell into one of these levels of control. So obviously alert is at the top, and is the highest energy, highest resource input, I suppose, all the way down to bottom where there is limited or no action. So that might be, again, for things like gazania, where they're declared for sale and movement. They are everywhere. We don't have an on-label approved chemical rate that we can advise landholders to use that we know is really effective. So that's where some of those ones sit down the bottom. So a lot of our alert weeds in our region are aquatic weeds. They are ones that might be coming out of people's aquariums or their fish bowls that they're tipping out. Their ponds, they've put something in their pond that they think looks really nice and then chuck a bit in the river as well. And again, grasses are a big one, so some of the needle grasses too. So these ones aren't necessarily established within our region. They might not even be within the state as yet, but they are ones that we're on the lookout for because the eastern states like to share a lot with us. So some of the higher ranked weeds that you might be seeing around here, or hopefully not seeing too much of because we're putting some resources and effort into, things like bufflegrass and cooler grass. So there's not too many infestations of this across our region. The ones that we do know of are pretty inactive at the moment because we've funneled a fair bit of resources and time and effort into controlling them because they're obviously not one that we want to get into cropping systems. A spiky one that Scott is very familiar with is Hudson pear. Again, not a widely distributed pest plant in our region. There are some small infestations. It's relatively, it can spread quite easily, so it's vegetative, so a little chunk of that can fall on the ground and will very quickly take and grow, but it is a reasonably slow grower, so it is one that's easier for us to control if you can get past the spikes. Some more grasses that are high on the radar are feathertop rhodes or Norman grass, fountain grass and pampas grass. Again, they're probably higher on our radar in these Mallee sort of areas because we definitely don't want them, A, getting into native vegetation, or B, into people's crops and being so easily spread and being able to establish there. African rue, another one that we don't have too many patches of within our region, but is one that we definitely want to keep on the down low. Branched broom rape, massive program quite a few years ago now, was pretty high on the radar, is another one that can affect cropping areas. So I'm racing through, sorry, I know everyone wants a beer. So they're some of probably the higher ranked ones. Like I said, there is a table that illustrates where all of these have fallen out and the different land uses. It's in the Pest Plant summary plan over there, and it will also be up on the website soon.